Hello, this is Darren.
And this is Paige.
And this is
Where's the Lemonade?
Where we talk about what happens when life throws you lemons.
Make some lemonade?
Maybe. Some weeks it's lemon squares.
Yeah, some weeks it's just lemons.
Yeah.
On today's episode,
we're going to talk about compromise in blended families.
Ooh, there's a lot of it, baby.
When we first got married, there was a lot of things we had to talk about.
What?
A lot of things we had to blend together, right? And which meant there was a lot of compromise.
A lot.
Whether it was the small things like you had a kitchen full of pots and pans.
Mm-hmm.
And so did I.
Correct. And so, yeah, we had to literally go through every pot and pan and say, keep or toss, keep or toss.
It sounds like a simple thing, and it kind of was a simple thing, but it was kind of our first foray into compromise.
Yeah, and it was kind of tedious. I mean, towels. We did it with towels. We did it.
We kept all of our towels with as many kids as we had.
We did, but then eventually we had to get rid of some.
We did.
But all kinds of things like that.
And then every once in a while there'd be something that would spark a little heated debate, like storage bins.
Oh my goodness. Darren has an issue with storage bins.
I don't know why, because our garage it's a big garage, right? But it was full. It was packed full. Of storage bins.
We have 10 children, and you and I, and food storage, and a business, and yeah.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
But we got through it, kind of.
It's something we still work through.
We still do.
By the way, there are no cars in our garage.
No, and there never will be.
That's not what garages are for, right?
No, garages are to store our kids' stuff. But no, actually, our kids that have moved out, that are married and have moved out for a long time, they've come and gotten their stuff.
Yes. Well, and some of them still have a few bins, but we have said, hey, let's go through your bins and get it down to maybe one or two instead of
10.
10, yes.
12.
And so, but most of it is gone.
Yeah. But hey, we worked through that. But those small compromises actually led into an interesting way that we actually interact with each other. We learned how to compromise. So when bigger things came up, we had to figure that out.
Yeah, it's true. But yeah, there's just lots of small things like we didn't know. I didn't know how to handle 9 people in a house because that's how many we had. Well, 10 for a short time and then 9 for the next couple of years. I didn't know how to deal with that. And so even just like socks and laundry. Do you remember the laundry?
Yeah.
Oh, the laundry. Oh, my.
Well, because a lot of our kids were swimming at the time, so it was like 3 outfits a day.
And 4 towels.
4 towels a day. Yeah, it was nonstop laundry.
It was crazy. So, and I didn't really get a handle on that for a couple of years. And so one of the things we had was a sock basket. We just threw all the socks in a sock basket. And when people wanted socks, they just grabbed them out of the sock basket.
Yeah, that included my socks too.
Yep.
And your socks too.
Yep.
But the girls and the boys were separate at least.
No. Oh, yeah, you know what?
Yeah,
they were.
You're
right.
Were separate.
You're right. It was kind of crazy.
Yeah.
And now we have a much better system.
Well, there's only 3 kids in the house now, too.
There's only 3 kids, but we've been doing it for a while. I would say the last 5 kids, everybody has their own laundry basket. Their own laundry gets done.
So we came up with a good compromise. We came up with a better solution than what we had done in our previous homes, right? Because they didn't scale to how many kids we have. Probably one of the most contentious compromises we had to go through was where to live.
I don't think that was contentious. It was just
hard, though.
It was a lot of discussion, but I don't know that it was contentious.
Yeah, I think you're right.
I mean, it was without question we weren't going to live in my house. I mean, that was never even an option.
No, it really wasn't.
So it was live in your house that you had, which was a large home that could fit us all. You'd only lived in it for 6 months, I think.
6 months. I bought it after my divorce.
Right. So it was painted and fresh and blank and ready for someone to come in and decorate. Or we talked about selling that house and
moving somewhere else.
Yeah, moving somewhere. And after much discussion and compromise, we decided to live in this house.
So why was that such a compromise for you?
Well, it was hard for me and my kids to leave the town that we lived in. I mean, all of our friends, they were there for us during that really hard time with divorce and separation. You know how that is.
Oh, yeah.
They were there for us. They were our family. And it was hard to leave them and for the kids to leave their friends. And like I said, especially because we'd gone through that hard time, and they were there for us. So that was difficult for us to just pack up and leave and say goodbye to all of them.
Yeah, I bet. Well, I know it was hard. I watched you go through it.
Yeah, it was hard.
Also, another compromise in that and where to live was I bought a house 7 homes down from the house I was living in before with my ex.
Yep, you heard that right, listeners.
Yes. So
7 houses apart from his ex-wife at the time that I moved
which
in.
she was renting. Right.
Yes.
So that was tough because we could see her and her house from our front yard.
Yeah. So
that was hard for you. It was hard for me too.
It was. That was part of our compromise. That was part of our discussion was, do we want to sell this house and move off of the same street as her? I mean, we talked about that.
We did. I mean, luckily, 9 months later, she moved.
Yeah, she moved around the corner.
And so now she's not down the street, but around the corner.
Yeah. And
about a quarter mile or so.
Yeah. It ended up being hard for us, but good for the kids.
Absolutely. Good for the kids because it was easy for them to, if they forgot something, to go to their mom's house and get it and then come back.
Yep.
So that made it easy. Other things we had to discuss and work through were like work, which we've talked about in other podcasts. Were you going to continue working, or now were you going to be full-time chauffeur? Right.
Well, and again, I worked in the city that I lived in Lincoln, so was I going to commute 40 minutes to work?
There were so many decisions to make at the beginning.
There was. So we ultimately decided that it wasn't even financially beneficial for me to keep working.
No. I think you were pretty happy about that.
I was very happy about that.
Yeah. Something about working at Wells Fargo during the dark days.
The dark times.
So everything, sports, what sports the kids were in, what bedrooms the kids ended up in, all these decisions had to be made. And I thought we did a pretty good job on compromise. We made some mistakes throughout that, but we made adjustments as we needed to.
I think mistakes are always going to be made. We continue to make mistakes.
Yeah.
All you can do is try and correct them the best you can.
And learn from them.
Absolutely. Yeah. And yet we did make mistakes. And our kids have told us we've made mistakes.
Yeah, listen to our last podcast.
Yeah.
You'll hear some of that.
And you know what? That is to be expected. I can't imagine a blended family that just... everything went super smoothly and there were no mistakes. I don't think I'd want to talk to those people.
No. Yeah, me neither. So like with some of our other podcasts, we did some research on compromise.
We did. Actually, you did. You were very good at this. I've been sick all week, so you did that for me, and I appreciate that. And yeah, we found out that
there's a lot of crazy people out there. That's what we found.
Well, I wasn't going to put it that way.
Well, I'm going to put it that way. People say you should have no compromise in marriage. I'm like, then you haven't been in a marriage before.
Yeah, I read those articles you sent me about the ones that said there should be no compromise in marriage because then neither person is happy. But then it was funny, as you went through the article...
They renamed it.
All they did was use a different name than compromise. They come up with a solution or make a deal.
Yeah, that's compromise.
It's compromise. So they just changed the name.
They changed the name. But then so I got several articles and I had some that said one thing, be yourself, stand up for yourself, and others that said, be less selfish and be selfless and don't be a doormat or bend. All this different advice. But we kind of broke all of that down into different aspects of that. And some of the things that we found were the examples of compromise. Like 3 different, and we came up with a 4th one, different concepts of compromise. The win-win compromise, the win-lose, the lose-lose, and the lose-lose-win.
Yes, meaning parents lose, kids win.
Yeah.
And that happens in a blended family.
It absolutely does.
Yep.
But one thing that we did learn from reading those articles and other people's experiences, you have to compromise.
Absolutely. I mean, you can't get through your marriage, blended or not, without compromise.
Well, making adjustments.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. Is this where you want to share some of our compromises that we've made?
The first one that popped into my mind is actually not ours, but I think of our daughter Rachel.
Okay. I don't know where you're going with this.
Well, you'll find out.
Please tell me.
So Rachel, our daughter Rachel, is a Jane Eyre type of girl. She reads everything. She's just studious and reads. And the man she fell in love with was a NASCAR racing, football, basketball fanatic.
Country music. Rachel hated country music. She hated football. She hated sports. Yeah. And then she
knows more about NASCAR than I think Russell does now.
Oh, she does. She knows all their names, who's won.
Their wives' names, if they're having fights with each other. It's really kind of funny.
She knows all the football players.
This is a great example of Rachel embracing what her husband loved. And making it part of her.
Yes, and do you remember how she did this? So
yes, I do, yeah.
So while he would be watching, say, a NASCAR race, this was before she fully embraced NASCAR or football, she would lay on the couch with him, put her feet in his lap, he would rub her feet while she read a book. So it was a win-win. She got to sit there, have her feet rubbed, and read a book while he watched the sporting event that he wanted to.
Probably one of the best compromises I've seen.
And that you end up with a win-win. That is a win-win.
And so she was willing to sacrifice some of her time to be with her husband.
Yeah.
Great example. Thank you, Rachel, for that. You've been a great example to us.
Yep.
So I think that's a great example of win-win. Another example of a win-win that we saw today, we were over at some friend's house. It was a younger couple. And the husband's an avid hunter, and he wants to go to Arkansas to hunt.
Yeah, and the wife was like, well, I don't want to go to Arkansas to hunt. And she says, I know, I'll go to the hot springs while you hunt. And he was like, done.
Yeah, that was a simple...
Yeah, and we were like, win-win right there. They're both getting what they want.
So when you look for win-win situations, you're looking for where you both get benefit from the decision that's being made.
And you have to, like, she was thinking... I'm assuming she was thinking, I want to be with him, right? He wanted to go to Arkansas and hunt, but she's like, well, I don't want to hunt. But she's still thinking, but I want to be with you, right?
Right.
And so you still have to have your mindset of there's going to be things that you still want to be with your spouse, just like Rachel and Russell. She still wanted to be with him. She didn't want to just not be with him for 4 hours while he watched, a sporting event. She wanted to be with him. And so that's when you have to get creative and go, okay, how can we both get what we want in this situation?
Right. So that's, do we have any examples of ourselves of win-win? It just happens all the time.
I don't know. We'll have to think about that one.
It's a little late to think about it. We're in the middle of the podcast, honey. Oops, we should have thought that one through.
Win-win was we married each other.
Yeah, there you go. Woohoo! All right, what about win-lose? Has that ever happened? Can you give an example of a win-lose compromise?
Oh, gosh. I think that happens all the time. Win-loses, I think, are probably more common than win-wins in the respect that...
Well, it takes time to do a win-win.
Yes, it does. And sometimes the stars have to align for a win-win, right?
Yeah.
But a lot of times it's a win-lose. So say you want to go do something that I don't, but I do want to be with you, so I go with you. Maybe I'm not having the best time, but, so... I'm giving up my time or whatever, something I wanted to do to be with you. That's a win-lose. However...
long term, though, it's probably a win-win because we develop our relationship stronger.
Exactly.
So you have to look at it that way.
You do, and you can't begrudge the loss that you're taking in a win-lose. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
You can't begrudge that. You just have to go, you know what? This is one that I'm taking for the team because, it's important to... my husband, or your wife, whatever the situation is. But I think a win-lose is pretty typical, right?
Yeah, I think so. But so how do you stop? Because one of the articles talked about being a doormat, right? Meaning you never get to choose. You just always relent to your spouse.
Well, I guess you guys have to discuss that and say, you know what? I've gone the last 4 times, with you to whatever you're thinking. I think a good well, this isn't a win-lose though. This is a win-win. When we go on vacation and I want to sit on the beach and read a book. Well, you don't read books, but
well, I am literate. Thanks, honey. I do read books. I know how.
Not for pleasure.
Not for pleasure.
Not
no,
for
I do
pleasure.
it for work all the time.
You're reading all the time. Sorry, not for pleasure.
Yes. So for me, I program to relax. So I take my laptop out to the beach. You've got your book. I have my laptop, and we do a great job at talking to each other about what's going on at the right appropriate time. So that has turned into a win-win.
Yes.
Right? Now, another win-lose that we have, which is an interesting one.
Okay.
Where do you want to eat tonight, honey?
Oh, I knew you were going to bring this up. I want to eat at any place you want to eat, sweetheart.
Yeah, that's not true. So I eat everything, not just anything. I eat everything. So I really don't have an opinion on where to go out to eat.
Yeah, and so most of the time, I would say 90% of the time, I pick because you really don't care.
I really don't.
You genuinely don't care. And we have made an agreement in our marriage because I care a lot of the time.
Yes, you do.
And if I say I don't care, I truly mean I don't care, and I want you to make the decision.
She kind of means that.
Okay, except for the restaurant thing.
Except for the restaurants. So this is how it normally goes when Paige says, all right, you choose tonight. I'm tired of choosing. I go, great, let's go to Thai food. And you say,
I
had Thai food yesterday. So then I say, okay, then Mexican or Chinese. And she goes, okay, Mexican, right? So
yes,
I got to choose.
Sort of,
right? But it's good to know, though, that we understand each other well enough. If I really was a picky eater, then that would be a different situation.
Right. But I have learned, and it did bother me in the beginning of our marriage because I thought that I was just making all these decisions, and I'm like, he's never getting his way. And you truly don't care.
No, I really don't.
It's very rare that you have a certain restaurant you want to go to because you'll eat anything.
Yep.
And most of the time I do. And most of the time I've got something in mind.
Yep, you do. So,
but yeah, you're right. A lot of times.
So that's a win-lose that I'm completely happy with. So.
Okay, what about a lose-lose?
Oh, lose-lose. This one's an interesting one. At one time, a marriage counselor told me, or some advice, if you can't make a decision, the decision's made. You do nothing.
So if you can't come to an agreement or a compromise,
right,
then you do
it's
nothing.
It's a lose-lose,
right?
Yeah.
You do nothing. And it's a lose-lose.
Because no one gets their way. No one gets what they wanted. I shouldn't say get their way. If you're worried about getting your way, you need to grow up.
Yeah, that's a problem.
Well, I need to be right.
Yes.
You know what?
That's a problem.
Check your little selfishness ego at the door.
Yeah.
It's more important that you get your feelings made known and your desire. If your desire is just to be right, that's a really bad position to be in.
That's going to cause a lot of issues. But
Right.
if you want to make your desires known, that's different.
Very different.
That's very different.
So a lose-lose basically says we can't come to an agreement, so we both lose.
Yeah, so we're not going to really make a decision, and you still have to be okay with that because that's still your decision. Your decision is to not make a decision, and you've got to go forward and be okay with that.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely. The last one that we came up with was the lose-lose win. It's when both parents are kind of losing, but
it's okay. That's our dog in the background.
We'll talk about that lose-lose win now with the dog.
That's just a lose-lose-lose.
Yeah. So a lose-lose win is when both parents are sacrificing, not getting what they want, but the kids or the family is better by they get the win. And I think the best example of that is probably church.
Yeah, when we moved into your house in your
neighborhood
that your ex lived in, we were in the same church together. And
same congregation,
and that was going to be really difficult for us, very difficult. We talked about it at length and decided that it would be best for the kids for us to stay in the same congregation, and it has. But that was
was tough.
I would say that was definitely a lose-lose for us, but a win for the kids.
Absolutely a win for the kids.
And I think we've been pretty happy with that decision, even though there have been times that we haven't been happy with
the situation.
We are still happy that we made that choice, and we've moved forward with it, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's been best for the kids, no doubt.
It has been best for the kids, and I think best for our family overall.
Yes, no doubt.
All right, now that we've talked about the different kinds of compromise, win-win, win-lose, lose-lose, and lose-lose-win, let's talk about some tips that we learned from some of the articles that we read.
Yeah, we found a good article that had several good tips. First one was communicate your needs clearly.
Now, this one is extremely important and probably one of the hardest things to do.
It is to say, and in this article it said, make sure you're using the words I, right? Like, I need this. You need your spouse to understand what you're saying and what your needs are. And
that can be really difficult because men and women are very different in this respect. From that book, Men Are From Mars and Women Are From Venus, men tend to be more direct and women tend to be indirect,
right,
in the way that they do things. But one thing that I found exciting about you was on a road trip.
Yes, you mean the air conditioner?
Absolutely.
and that I guess that was a road trip, wasn't it? We were picking up somebody from Scout Camp.
Picking up Jacob from Scout Camp, yeah.
And that was maybe only our fourth or fifth date. I'm not sure. Anyway, we weren't too serious yet, but I was going with you, and I was freezing, and I reached over and I turned the air conditioning down.
I was so stoked about that.
I know, and he was like, "Oh, that's so awesome!" And I'm like, "What's awesome?" And you were like, "You turned down the air conditioner," and I went, "'Cause I was cold."
Yeah, it was great because you weren't just sitting there shivering and looking at me like you're supposed to read my mind. Right? I mean, because that's just hard for men. We don't read minds very well.
No, that is hard. That is hard. And I think that's kind of a go-to for women a lot of times. And so you were so happy.
I was. So when you are making compromises, it's extremely important that you figure out what is really behind the position that your spouse is taking. That may require asking questions, finding out what's really going on.
Right, exactly.
In order to do that, though, you have to do our second tip.
Listen without interrupting.
That is so hard for men. Well, especially for me.
I think it's hard for women, too, because women just want to, sometimes, blah, 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 blah.
Well, why do you think it's hard?
To listen without interrupting?
Yeah.
Well, we discussed this before because... Like you said, you said we're already formulating our response to what the person is saying, right?
And we're not really listening to what they're saying.
We're formulating that rebuttal that we're gonna come up with instead of truly listening to what they're saying.
Yeah, one of the tricks Stephen Covey uses is to state back what you heard.
And I hate that.
I know you hate that.
I hate that. I know. So he has done that. He doesn't do this anymore, but you've learned this in counseling.
Yes, I have.
And to make the person feel validated. Yeah. And so you'll say, so what I'm hearing from you, Paige, I'm like, do not counsel me.
It's a good way to train yourself to listen.
Yes.
Right. And you have to be able to, in your response, be able to state back what they told you instead of just stating back what your rebuttal is going to be. So that's a good active listening tip.
Yes, but just make sure that your spouse
don't patronize them.
Yeah, do not patronize. Oh, gosh. Okay, the next one, carefully weigh your options.
Oh, yeah. On big decisions, we've done this.
We have done this many, many times.
Yeah, pros and cons lists.
Many times.
What if scenarios.
Yep, and we've done this with jobs. We've done this with moving into a house. We've done this with kids. Sports. We've done this so many times.
We don't do this with picking a restaurant.
No, you can't do little things like that. That's ridiculous.
You'll never make a decision in your life.
Yes, but
what if we eat Mexican food tonight and Chinese food tomorrow?
Yeah, no, we would never do anything like that.
No.
But you do have to weigh your options with big decisions and make sure that all of the factors are out there so you can make an informed decision, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
The next one was get in the trenches. Put yourself in your partner's shoes. Advice given to us from Caroline, our first marriage counselor when we were engaged.
Yes, that was great advice. She would say, get in the trenches with the other person. Try and feel what they're feeling, be with them.
Understand where they're coming from.
Yes. And sometimes that's hard.
It is, because you have to put your own selfishness away. Right?
Yeah, it's true.
Right? You have to be able to get rid of your own desires and needs and find out what the real desires and needs are of your spouse.
And I would say we've gotten better at this over the years, but we still have arguments where we don't do that.
No, we dig in.
And when we dig in, usually I walk away from the moment because I'll say, you know what, this isn't a good time to discuss this, right?
Yep.
We're not going to be making any kind of compromises when we're both in this tension-filled mood. And so you'll want to keep discussing it. And I say, you know what?
But we've gotten better at that because I know you need time to think.
And you need time
to cool down.
Cool down.
Yeah. So we figured that out.
Yes.
All right. Next one is consider what is fair.
Which when I first saw that, we both thought that's kind of childish. Like, oh, what's fair? You know,
we tell our kids all the time, well, that's too bad. Life's not fair.
Life's not fair. Yeah, I always say the only thing fair in life is that it's unfair for everyone, even though it seems more fair to some people. But I understand what they were saying. Just like if your decision was moving to be closer to one person's job, so you're going to be 5 minutes away from your work, but 45 minutes from the other person's work, that's not fair. You know, I mean, it was saying that, it kind of goes along with weighing options, but just make sure that it's being fair for both of you.
Right. And, sometimes it's not going to be exactly fair.
It's not.
Deal with it.
Just make sure that it's not always.
Otherwise, you turn into a doormat.
Yes, you don't always want it to be unfair to one person.
No, and that talks into the next one. It's make a decision and stick with it. And we added on to this, don't dwell on it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So even if it's a good decision, and things worked out well with the decision and it was a win-lose, and you went, I knew I was right.
Not good.
Not good. Because
not good.
That's just causing contempt with your spouse.
It is. And we have learned that's not, contempt is the worst. That's poison.
Poison
for a marriage. So yeah, don't go, if you just would have listened to me, this would have, if we would have.
Good or bad.
Right. Good or bad. Don't rub it in. Just you have to just make.
You made that decision together.
You made it together. You've got to go forward with it together and never look at it again as it was your decision or my decision. It was your joint decision.
Own it.
Move forward, and don't cause that resentment or contempt in your marriage by rubbing it in either way.
Right. At work, we have a common phrase on this: disagree and commit.
Yes. Yeah.
Which is exactly what this is. You have to make your needs clearly known,
mm-hmm.
why you disagree, and then if you finally come up to, all right, disagree, but we're committing to doing this.
Right.
And that happens in lose-lose situations as well. It does. Right?
And we have said this to each other before. I have said to you, I disagree, but, I respectfully disagree, but let's move forward. And because sometimes there isn't going to be a perfect resolution or even a good resolution, and sometimes you're just going to disagree, but you've still got to come up with something and move forward.
Well, and that happens most of the time with us around discipline of kids.
Yes, for sure. For sure.
In fact, we have a whole podcast planned for disciplining stepchildren, your own children in these blended families. It can get pretty dicey sometimes.
It can, and trying to be a united front.
Yeah, exactly.
And that it can get dicey because, my child, right? My blood child. And I was going, oh, no, that's not how I would have done it. Oh, no. And I had to bite my tongue, talk to you about it later, and not in front of the child.
Right. And that can be really hard.
It can be really hard.
And then other times, it's where the bio parent can't necessarily see everything, so they have to be able to relinquish some of the control to the other parent that maybe has a different perspective.
Yeah.
So all of these, we'll talk about that in our next in another podcast in the future.
But make a decision, stick with it, whatever it is. Don't regret it. Don't rub it in.
Move forward.
Move forward
as a team. You're a team. The last one, and probably one of the most important for follow up on things, is checking in with one another.
I really liked that one because say you have made this big compromise and say it was more, you were compromising more than your other, the other person. This is, a couple months down the road. Hey, let's check in. How's this going? Are you feeling, is everything going okay? Are you feeling resentment, right? You got to talk about these things.
You got to talk through them. Even though you're sticking with your decision, you still have to be able to talk through and show compassion towards each other if it's harder than you thought.
Well, and sometimes course correction.
Sometimes, yeah, but if you're course correcting all the time, then you're wishy-washy, so you have to be careful.
Right, but that's what the whole check-in is about. Check-in to make sure, how are we doing on this? Let's.
And we've made some tough decisions where we gave it a year
Yes.
To see how things would work out.
Yep.
And that's another tip on compromise. And this had to do with attending the same congregation as my ex-spouse. We gave it a year. We said, all right, let's stick with this. That was our decision. I knew it was tough for you.
Right.
And you said, I don't know if I can do this forever. So we came up with a compromise on let's try it for a year.
Right.
Let's see how we are after a year, and then we'll make another decision then.
Right.
So that was our decision, which to me was a good compromise because it gave you the ability to see, okay, I'm not stuck here forever.
Right.
Right. So I think that worked out actually quite well.
Yeah, definitely.
The funny moment of the week. This one is all me. On our last...
Because you're just so funny.
Yeah, this was not that funny, actually. But so on our heritage trip, which is, I think, our podcast 10 or something like that, our son David lost several items in many hotel rooms. And this can be very difficult for a 12-year-old sleeping in a different hotel every night for, 8 days. He lost a Game Boy and Sunday shoes.
And flip-flops.
Yep. I'm surprised he had any shoes at the end.
Yep. Luckily, the Sunday shoes were getting too small. The flip-flops were brand new.
Yeah, we're never seeing those again.
Well, and we're not buying, there was a natural consequence to that.
Yeah, and then the great thing about the DS that he lost was he called the hotels and he found it and they shipped it to us.
They sure did.
And I was really proud of him. He kind of stood up and did that. And guess what happened to me? I was traveling this week and I left my suit jacket in one of the hotels. Now, I was in 3 hotels in 3 nights. So I'm going to claim, Pulsifer genes on that one, maybe.
Yes, let's claim that.
But I called the hotel. I took care of it.
Good job, honey. The moral of the story is don't be too hard on your kids and we weren't hard on him.
No, we weren't. We just made him fix the problem, which he did a great job.
You need to call, and he did. But yeah, don't be too hard because you might make those same mistakes. If you like today's episode,
give us 5 stars on iTunes, Spotify, Google.
And head to Facebook and like us.
And check out our blog at where'sthelemonade.org.
Where you can leave questions and comments.
But most of all,
go out and make some lemonade.
You betcha, baby. On our next episode,
we're going to be talking about how to integrate our previous life into the new life we're creating with each other.
Without building jealousy or resentment.
Yep.